Hi, and welcome back to this knitting podcast. My name is Juliette, and I'm a PhD student in Cambridge, and this is where I talk about all my knitting projects, the ones that I finished, the ones that I'm still working on, and any future projects as well. There's been like 3 months since my last podcast episode, and it's been quite a busy time. I went to Japan on a family holiday. I also had a bit of a PhD crisis. I've been quite busy with work, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, it's been quite a long time, so I have quite a lot of projects to go through today. There's also quite a lot of new faces here on the channel since my last video. I'm really grateful for that. My East Anglia Yarn Festival video popped off a bit more than usual, and a lot of new subscribers joined from that video, so I'm very grateful. So I thought I'd actually introduce myself a bit more for the new faces. So I'm a PhD student, and I learned how to knit when I was 5 years old, and it's actually my grandmother who taught me how to knit. So I didn't do much garment knitting until 2 years ago, when I really got the knitting bug from discovering basically knitting Instagram and petite knit in particular. So that's where I started knitting a lot of garments since. Today I have 2 finished objects to show you, as well as I think a whopping 5 whips, works in progress. And I also do have a bit of yarn acquisition to show from my trip to Japan. So grab a hot drink, because this is going to be a long one, I think. I'm having a little coffee with milk. And make sure you give this channel a subscribe if you're enjoying it. It would be great if we could reach 1,000 subscribers. I'll be super grateful for that. And no pressure, of course. And if you like this video, then make sure you give this video a like. Now let's jump straight into it. My first finished object, which I don't have with me because it was a gift, is the April cardigan by Petite Knit. So if you've been a subscriber of this channel for a bit, you might know that this was actually my second April cardigan in a row. So I had 2 of my best friends requesting April cardigans for their birthdays, which are not too far from each other. And so I finished the first one in January, and I immediately got started on the second one. So both of them got their gifts like really late, but they understood that it might take some time to crank these April cardigans out. So the second one I knit in this Caribbean blue color from Filcolana Arvetta, and I held it double because that's originally a sock yarn, so I held it double to make the DK weight gauge of the April cardigan. And because it was my second time knitting this pattern, it went super smooth. And also, I mean, this might seem obvious, but I knit the first one in a fingering weight gauge, and I modified the pattern accordingly, so I was just like so surprised at how fast it was going with a DK weight gauge, but of course it would, right? So I think it took me 2 months exactly to knit everything, also the button band, which is the bane of my existence, but we carry on. And there was a further delay because I procrastinated knitting, or rather sewing, the buttons, which is my own fault. I was also away for a bit as well, so that took a bit of time out of that. But it's done now, it's been gifted, and I actually filmed a whole project vlog for the April cardigan, the second one. If you'd like to see more of that, then make sure you give my channel a subscribe, and you'll be able to catch the notification from when that project vlog is out, which should be about in a week's time. I actually purchased Pigeon Wishes buttons for this cardigan. They're really cute. I'm actually going to see if I have some leftover. First of all, it comes in this really cute packaging with like haberdashery notions from the Pigeon Wishes shop, which you can find on Etsy. The packaging is also super adorable. The buttons came in this little plastic bag, and there was like fluff in there as well. And I still have some leftovers. This is the Painterly button colorway, which comes in this beautiful, colorful, rainbowy, marbling effect resin buttons essentially. And it also came with a lovely fabric tag. We have a cute flowers behind as well, and it says blooming lovely. And it also came with this postcard type art postcard thing here of a Chinese money plant, which I thought would go quite well on my little postcard art wall decoration I've got going on above my desk here. So yeah, I really recommend these buttons. They came in a set of 10, I believe, and I only needed 5 for the April cardigan, but I'm sure I'll find some very good use out of the rest of them. And the quality is really nice as well. So, and I think it's really cute that every button is unique. You'll never get two that are the same. And it was also quite funny having to choose which side of one button I preferred. It was a really enjoyable experience getting these buttons and sewing them on the cardigan. I think it looks really nice because otherwise the cardigan, I mean the color is already a bit out there, but I think the buttons really make the cardigan a bit more, that much more whimsical with the little colored buttons that contrast against the really nice Caribbean blue behind. So I think that was a great choice. It's actually my friend, the gift receiver, who chose those buttons amongst the choices that were available for Pidget Wishes, which I really wanted to try out after seeing it on Handmade by Florence's YouTube channel. So I am finally free of the shackles, so to speak, of gift knitting those two April cardigans. I mean, the people who receive them are very knit worthy, and both of them own stuff that I've made and knit for them, and they take really good care of them, so they're very knit worthy people. But that is to say, I'm still very happy that I don't have to do these gift knits anymore and I can finally concentrate on my knits. Let me talk about the second finished object for today. These are just plain old vanilla socks, but in the most wonderful colorway by this hand dyer called James Makes Yarn. His Instagram is James Makes Things, but the shop is called James Makes Yarn. And this is the Tamagotchi colorway, which you might recognize from my East Anglia Yarn Festival vlog. So this was one of my purchases from this year's festival. I saw it on his Instagram and I was like, I definitely have to make a stop at his stall at the festival to make sure I grab one of these. It was the last one left over as well, so I was very chuffed with my purchase, and I knew that I just wanted to make some plain. These are far from being plain, but I wanted to make some vanilla socks to really make the colorway just speak for itself. And I'm so happy with them. They're so cute. Because like my outfits are usually pretty basic. Like today, like I'm just wearing a linen shirt and like blue jeans. So I like sometimes just having some funky socks. And I'll also wear Mary Janes a lot from Doc Martens, so they kind of are a good way of showing off socks. And so I really like the idea of like wearing colorful socks like this when I'm wearing those kinds of shoes. The pattern is just some plain old vanilla socks. I didn't really follow a pattern, so to speak. I also did the heel in the same way that it was done for the Una socks for 52 weeks of sock that I've knitted before. So I think it's called the Eye of the Partridge heel, but it also has this garter stitch edge, which personally, first of all, I really like the look of, but I also find it much easier to count the number of like repeats that I've done in the heel flap, and also to pick up stitches from, because essentially all you have to do when you're picking up the stitch from the flap after you've done the gusset is to pick up a stitch in between each of the purl rows. And I find that just visually a bit easier to keep a track of in terms of numbers and stuff. I did a 2x2 cuff, which honestly, maybe I could have done a bit longer. I also made sure, because I wanted to use as much of this yarn as possible, I tried to make it so that the foot length and the leg length were sort of equal, which makes these socks ride up quite high on my calves. That's okay, because they'll keep me warm. I feel like I really nailed the basic sock structure for this pair. I also sort of tried to do an anatomical toe. It's super subtle, but you might be able to notice that I did a bit more sloped increases here than this side. So this is the right sock and this is the left one. There's a bit of anatomical shaping. I find that that fits my feet really well. I haven't worn these out yet. I'm a little bit worried that as soon as I start wearing them, the color's just not gonna be the same, which is, it happens with socks really. You're always gonna have a bit of like this coloration from stress points like underneath the shoe, the heels and stuff. But this is such a beautiful color and I really don't want it to fade in any way. So yeah, I'm going to be a bit precious about wearing these, I think. I also forgot to mention that with these socks, I got a lot of progress done while I was away for a conference. When I went to my conference last year in Copenhagen, I noticed that a few of the conference attendees were knitting. Last year I was a bit too shy to do so during the conference, but this time it was my third time around going to this particular conference. conference, I felt a bit more brave and I decided to bring my knitting with me. And I think socks were the perfect way to go because they don't take too much space in my suitcase and whatnot. Yeah, I got a huge amount of this sock done during a conference as well as during all the travel to the conference. And right before that conference, I also went on a separate trip again to Belgium. And I got to do a lot of knitting on the train because I went to Belgium by train. I was actually in the same town as Candid Knits, so Anne-Sophie, here on YouTube, but also on Instagram. So we almost saw each other at the conference town, but unfortunately she was ill, so we couldn't see each other. But I thought that was super nice that we meet people through the internet like this and we're able to have like, I guess, real life interactions, almost did at least. So yeah, we missed each other by only a little bit, but it was super fun and super nice of her to offer to see each other and stuff when I mentioned that I might be going to her town for the conference. Okay, let's move on to the works in progress. I think I'm going to do them in order of the ones that have the most progress on, and then to the one that have the least progress on, which is not necessarily the chronological order of cast-on, because I'm not very good at making sure I finish my older cast-ons first before I cast on new stuff. Anyway, so out of everything that I have, this is, I think, the one that has gone the furthest along the way in the project, and it's actually my Moby sweater. I'm not going to put this on because it's quite warm in the room because of this mini heat wave that we're having in the UK. This is actually the body part of the Moby sweater, which has already been blocked because I finished the body and I wasn't quite sure I was getting the ease that I intended to have with this. So as a sanity check, I wanted to have a mid-project vlog and see how much the garment widens, and then maybe that changes the length as well, because in knitting, if things become much wider, it also tends to like shrink on the vertical side. So I wanted to check all those things, and that's why I did a mid-project vlog. And it's actually fitting exactly as I intended. So when I wear this, I'll include some footage. It hits me right below the hip bones, which is like normally the sort of length I like for oversized jumpers. And the positive ease is perfect. I picked size L to make sure that I had like 25 or 30 centimeters of positive ease, because I saw a lot of Ravelry projects of people who had knitted the Moby sweater that said that for a cabled jumper that's a bit bulky, even though it's like a worsted weight jumper, the cables just sort of add some weight to it. For a project like this, they sort of wish that they had more positive ease than the 15 centimeters that are recommended in the pattern. I think the vision that I had was like a really oversized, really cozy cable jumper. This is also my first ever cable jumper project as well. And that's why I went for like the 25 to 30 range, so the really oversized positive ease range. And I'm really, really pleased with the outcome. So the cables are looking so neat. I'm really proud of myself. This is knitted, by the way, in Sandnes Garn Pure Gint. I'll include the color name. It's something called like olive green or something like that. It's crazy how everyone talks about how good Pure Gint is, and it's actually really true. Everyone mentioned that Pure Gint will bloom quite a lot after project blocking, and I did find that that was the case. And it also feels like, yeah, all the little holes, maybe holes that I sort of had got filled up by the yarn blooming, and the cables just like really became much neater after the mid-project block, which is always to be expected when you do a wet block with a cabled project, but I feel like this is especially nice. And I think Pure Gint has amazing stitch definition, so it really lends itself really well with these sorts of cabled projects or projects that need more stitch definition. I think it was one of the recommended yarns for the Moby sweater anyway, but I know it's also one of the used yarns for the Storm sweater, which I think would also work really well, because the Storm sweater has a lot of like stitch, purl and knit details. I think would really pop if you were to use a kind of round yarn like Pure Gint here. The yarn also became a lot softer after blocking, which I'm really happy about, because it is like a more of a rustic quality for sure. If you haven't worked with Pure Gint before, just bear in mind that it is more on the rustic side. It's certainly not as soft as a DK, but I've also been told that it's pretty much indestructible and that it also softens over the years. So it softens as you wear it more and more. I think last time I mentioned this project was probably in my like yarn stash tour and whip update video from 2 videos ago, and I mentioned how I needed to fix the collar because I had shifted the collar when I was sewing it down. I actually had to fix it like twice because what I did was I tinked back the fold to up to where I thought the error was, then finished knitting down, sewing down the fold, only to realize that I didn't tink back enough, and so I still had the shift in the fold, I think around here. I think I tinked back to here, and turns out the error was around here. So anyway, that was just my own mistake. So I've had to knit this collar 3 times total, which was a little bit annoying, but it is here now and it's beautiful. I'm really happy with it. So all I've got to do now is do the sleeves basically. And I think it's actually quite surprising how much wider the sleeves are compared to my usual knitting projects. Like you can see here, the width of the sleeve here, the depth is half the body length. And I've followed the instructions for the body length for my original size recommendation. So had I followed the pattern, my original recommendation would have been size S, and I sized up to an L to get enough positive ease. But I did follow the length recommendation from size S because I think it's like more proportional to my torso length as well. Anyway, all that to say, yeah, I'm quite surprised at how deep the yoke is essentially. I don't mind that at all. I'm really keen on like wide sleeves, especially if for a jumper that has like this much positive ease as well. I think the ratio is a bit better this way. The next project which I have like the most progress on is something that hasn't been mentioned in the channel yet, because it's something that I impulsively cast on as soon as I finished my second April cardigan gift knit. I think at the time I was having such urge to cast on something for myself after having not done so for such a long time because I was trying to prioritize these gift knits. So it's actually sweater number 23 from My Favorite Things Knitwear. And this is a really gorgeous blue yarn that I'm using from one of my purchases from Copenhagen on my trip last year. So it's this Hjelholt Ullspinderi handverk yarn, which is I think a really popular yarn to get if you're going to Denmark. It's like an iron weight or heavy worsted yarn made from Danish sheep. I mean, at least in the UK you cannot find it. So that's why I really took advantage of the fact that I was in Copenhagen for a conference last year, get a hold of this yarn. I had intended for that yarn to become a jumper for my partner, but I think he finds it a bit too rustic. And so I decided to make this jumper for myself regardless. I do have to say, it is a pretty rough yarn. If Purgin is too rustic for you, I wouldn't recommend this one. At least that's my impression of it. Obviously, I haven't blocked this yet, and I've only blocked my gauge swatch, which is a very small sample, so it's a bit hard to gauge, gauge, the softness out of it. But I also heard it's one of those indestructible yarns like Purgin that gets better with age, like fine wine. So I'm really hoping that, because also this jumper is quite a high crew neck, it's like quite tight around my neck, I hope that really softens with time. Also, this jumper has a huge amount of positive ease. I think it's got 35 centimeters of positive ease on me or something. So it's more intended as like almost an outer layer jumper. So a jumper that you'd wear instead of a jacket on, I don't know, like a slightly colder autumn day where you don't quite need a coat yet, but just the t-shirt will be too cold, or a thin jumper will be too cold. Same in spring. I think it will be perfect for transitional weather like this, or just when I'm in the house and I want to feel cozy with like a really big woolly jumper. The pattern is super nice. I mean, I really enjoy My Favorite Things Knitwear's pattern writing style. It doesn't give too much detail, which I prefer at my level. It's a nice drop shoulder construction with the increases which are visible here and here. So I really like this detail of like visible drop shoulder sloping like this, which is quite My Favorite Things Knitwear thing to do. And then once you've done the back panel, you've got the front panel as normal, and then you've got, again, the increases that are quite visible for the neckline. And this is really a detail that I enjoy a lot. I really don't enjoy it too much when the increases are right by the edge, because I find that then when you pick up stitches from the edge to do like a collar or, you know, sleeves, for example, whatever, it becomes really difficult because you've got those increased stitches that are making the stitches that you have to pick up quite fuzzy. So I prefer it to be away from the edge like this, so that it's much easier to then pick up the stitches here. And so, yeah, it's a very classic construction. You do the front panel, you do the shoulders, and then you join at the bottom of the neck, and then you do a bit of stockinette before she includes armhole shaping here. That's quite deep actually when I think about it. I think this is pretty good given how oversized the jumper is, so then it makes sure that your fabric doesn't bunch too much at the underarm. I've gotten quite a lot of progress. I'm already 3 out of 6 hanks through. I just finished a hank when I cast off the sleeve. This is the first time I'm actually doing a jumper in this order. I've decided to try out finishing all the details first before finishing the body. I usually typically just knit the body straight like I did for the Moby, and then do the sleeves, the collar, and then finish the jumper. But this time I decided that I would do collar and sleeves first and putting the body on hold, and then once those are done, do the rest of the body. I think this is good because, particularly because this jumper is huge, I'm not too sure how the body length is gonna hit without having the weight of the sleeves kind of sloping down the shoulders a little bit. So I've just finished one sleeve, and that took me maybe a total of 2.5 days. It's super fast because it's knit on 5mm needles. I'm getting a really good amount of progress for something that I started a month ago alongside like my 4 other whips. So yeah, I'm pretty chuffed with that. My next whip, which long-time followers of this channel will immediately recognize because this has existed for a long time, is this one. So this whip pains me. This is my Cumulus Tee from Petite Knit. It's a labor of love. It's knit in pure silk, which I will say this, I hate working with it. It's so squeaky. There's something about it that just like scratches the wrong part of my brain when I knit with it because of the squeaky sound. It's not silky. It's not silky when I knit it. Anyway, I started this 2 summers ago. It was one of my first garment projects actually. And I was like, oh yeah, a t-shirt. It's fine. It will not take too much time. This is a great way of starting garment knitting. Wrong. Don't do a t-shirt in 3mm needles as a first garment project or one of the first garment projects. I am so done with this. Every summer season, spring summer season, I bring this out basically to try to finish it. Okay, now I'm really close though, because last spring summer I managed to get all the way to the end of the body. Now I've just picked it back up because of this heat wave that we're having. I was like, okay, this is a really good time to finish my Cumulus Tee. So I've started the sleeve, and I think I'm at a good length now that I can cast off the sleeve, which requires doing an I-cord, and there's also something that I hate doing. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of aspects of this project which I don't like. The yarn, I mean, I love the feel of it, I just hate knitting with it. And the finishes, which is all applied I-cord, which I don't enjoy doing. And yeah, 3mm needles, so it's like, I'm not the biggest fan of like really small knit projects. This project is testing me, but it's getting really close. I feel like this weekend I could totally do this other sleeve. This, by the way, doing the sleeve only took me a day. I'm really close. Once I'm done with the other sleeve, all I have to do, so to speak, is the applied I-cord for the neck, and then I'm done. And then I'm never knitting with Knitting for Olive Pure Silk on its own. So this is knit in Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color cream. And I feel like this project needs a good wash. It's not really as white as it used to be, probably because it's been handled by me over 2 years of knitting this and like traveling with this sometimes. And it also has like a stain at the back from food. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, I feel like I need to give this a good wash after I'm done. I'm really excited to finish this though, because everyone who's knit with pure silk has said on the internet that it's a great summer garment. They love wearing it because it's cool to the touch, and it's really, yeah, it's something that you knit but you can definitely wear in the summer, which I'm quite keen on. I feel like I could get a lot of wear out of like a simple white t-shirt like this. So yeah, really keen to finish this off this summer. I don't want to let another summer pass by without having my Cumulus Tee done. So I'll try to make sure I finish this. I specifically took it out of my stash below my bed to remember that I have to finish this, basically. Now we're moving on to a whip that has definitely made an appearance on the last podcast episode, and it's my porcelain jumper, my porcelain sweater. I've talked about this project a lot of times now, so ever since September of last year it has made an appearance in one of my podcasts. So I won't talk too much about the construction or the yarn itself, because you can find that information from my previous videos, but I'll just talk about the progress that I've made. And I'm really happy to say that last time we talked about this, I was unraveling the start of this color work because I had made a mistake in the neckline increases here. And now look at everything that I've accomplished. So I've got this beautiful snowflake color work at just above the chest here, and then I've joined in the round, which makes a huge difference, and I've got the leaf motif done. This color work in particular, you really need to like finish it until you finally see the pattern that it's making, whereas this one you can sort of tell which stitch you're supposed to knit in the next row as you're knitting it, because it's a pretty symmetrical and kind of self-explanatory pattern. So yeah, this is like the bit that I don't really like about the porcelain sweater, so I'm glad that I got through that. And I only have the third motif, so motif C left, and then I'm done with the body. And I really want to finish this before it gets too warm. So this whole episode should be called Juliette is racing against time to finish her winter projects. So yeah, I was originally doing this as a knit along with one of my knit night friends. I also think that she's not quite done with porcelain sweater yet, although she's gone for a trip, so she might well just come back from the trip being like, hey, this is my porcelain. I'll be like, I haven't finished mine yet. So yeah, I'm really trying to prioritize this and the Moby. So out of all the whips that I've mentioned, the oldest is a Cumulus Tee. Next is a Moby, which I started January of the year before, and then this I started September last year. So this is like the third oldest whip that I have currently. So I really want to finish it. It's also absolutely gorgeous. I'll leave the details about the yarn that I've used here, but this is so pretty. I love the contrast that it's making. Also, for the sleeves, I intend to do this mod that Sisters Knit, I believe that's the channel, made. One of the sisters, I can't quite remember the name, she put this motif here at the cuff of her sleeve after having done the color works that's intended for the sleeve as according to the pattern. I think that's a really good idea because I'm expecting the sleeve to have quite a bit more stocking knitting before I move on to the rib. So if I end up, so basically in the pattern there's like 16 rows difference between each motif. I've done the mod of doing 18 rows just to space out the motifs a bit more on the body, and this is a mod that was recommended by the friend I'm knitting this with. I'm thinking, well, first of all, on the sleeve I'll do the same modification where I have 18 rows between this motif that you do on the sleeve and then the third one, pattern C. And then if I end up doing 18 stockinette knitting rows after the third one, just to have a good length on the sleeve, then I'll include as beginning of this part of the color work, like the mod that was done by one of the sisters from Sisters Knit. I think it looks really cute, and I really like the idea of basically not having too much blank space on the the cuff, basically. It's a really cute detail. Also, I really love this motif with the kind of 3 legs here. It's really cute. Oh yeah, and I added a collar. And this time I didn't make a mistake like the Moby. So it's looking really, really nice and neat. Let's take a second to admire this jumper. All right, so the next whip. Now, I feel like this needs a bit of introduction. Everyone and their mother currently is knitting the blouse #1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So I thought I would too. This is blouse #1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I'm actually finished with the body, which might look super cropped, but there's a reason behind it. Basically, I don't have enough yarn, so I'm playing a massive game of yarn chicken with this. So this is yarn that I picked up from the East Anglia Yarn Festival 2023, 4. And I've always intended for this yarn to become some form of summer garment because it's a merino silk yak blend. I thought it would lend itself really well for some summer knitting. I had enough for like, I suppose like a 3/4 sleeve jumper or like light jumper or t-shirt of some sort. When I saw that blouse number 1 was really popping off on the internet, I really got knit-fluenced. And also the fact that it's knit on 5mm needles, which sounded really good for me because I think my problem with summer knitting is the fact that it's on small needles. I don't really have the patience for that, unfortunately. It sounded like the blouse number 1 was a project that you could kind of crank out really quickly. And I really am finding that that's the case, indeed. Now, because I don't have enough meterage, I am specifically making this quite a cropped blouse number 1. Essentially, I thought it's better to have a cropped jumper with enough length on the sleeve rather than a jumper that's maybe the right length but 3/4 sleeve. Although I say this with a 3/4 sleeve shirt. Anyway, I prefer the idea of having long sleeves over not a cropped body, if I'm making sense. Anyway, I also expect this to grow by quite a bit because it's silk and merino and it's like on a really large gauge. So with like blocking, it should expand quite a bit. But anyway, even as it is right now, it's a good cropped length. It will essentially hit around the same like length that this shirt is hitting me at right now at the waist. So it's at the smallest part of my waist, and I think that's a good cropped length. Also, these are sort of like low-rise jeans, so it's kind of giving the illusion that this is super cropped, but I tend to actually wear high-waisted jeans a lot more, so I think it will work really well with the blouse number 1. Now, so I finished the body and I'm working on the second sleeve, and I'm currently having the issue where my yarn is getting a bit tangled because the rest of the body I did by having 2 strands coming from 2 separate yarn balls, and now that I'm on my 3rd and last skein, I'm having both strands coming from the same skein. So one from the center and one from the outside, if that's making sense. And now it's made a huge knot. So I'm gonna have to unfortunately cut the yarn, figure out the knot, and then wind 2 separate skeins from the leftover of this skein, and then have the 2 strands reconnected to my project so that they're coming from 2 separate skeins so that they don't get tangled like this. I feel like if I do the join at a strategic place, like at the back, that's close to the armpit, then it's not going to be visible that I've joined the yarn together. And I say this in particular because it's quite an open gauge project, so I feel like yarn joins will become a bit more obvious on here than on any other project. The pattern is super easy. You do sort of a style similar to the April cardigan where you have this saddle shoulder, except on the blouse number 1 it's just a 1-stitch saddle instead of like however many stitches it is on the April cardigan. And then you do increases just for the sleeve, and then you do some for the armpit area, so on the body and the sleeve. So it's exactly like the April cardigan actually, with a few differences in the stitch count, and obviously the neck is a lot wider because it's intended to be like a boat neck. So I was very familiar with this. I think they called it the contiguous sleeve construction, or setting sleeves construction. So that was very much a breeze. I finished this whole thing I think in a week, which is crazy. And I know I'm supposed to be working on other projects. I keep saying that I'll be prioritizing my porcelain in particular, but I think I had an urge, I got knit-fluenced, I had an urge to do blouse number 1. Everyone's knitting a blouse number 1 at the moment, it's crazy. I mean, good for my favorite things knitwear, you know, she's having an amazing bonus right now from all the people knitting blouse number 1. But I also got knit-fluenced by Handmade by Florence because she mentioned that she was going to knit one as well, and that someone from her knit group had knit 3 of them. So clearly it's like a great testament to how good this pattern is and how versatile it is. I don't really have thin jumpers in my wardrobe, in my knitted wardrobe at least, and I did think to myself, it's a bit of a shame that all the jumpers I have sometimes become just way too warm for the transitional weather, and so I thought it would be great to add a piece that lends itself more to this transitional weather so I can keep wearing my knits throughout the year. But that's not a 3mm needle project, like a summer project. I'm really pleased with the construction and the rate at which this is going. It's really fast. Other than this roadblock I'm having with the yarn, it was going super smooth. The yarn itself, let's talk about it, is so as I mentioned, a hand-dyed yarn that I purchased from East Anglia Yarn Festival last year. It's from this brand called Yarn Unique, and they specialize in like really saturated gemstone colors. That being said, this is a lovely color, but I don't know if you can see the specks of white that you see in the otherwise beautifully variegated / heathered yarn. And it's actually bits of yarn that just didn't take the dye, I think. I'm not sure. If someone has used Yarn Unique's gemstone, yarn, whatever, let me know if this is intentional. Now that I have the whole garment out like this, it looks intentional because it looks like little sparkles. But I was also, as a customer, as a consumer, a little bit disappointed because I thought that it was just like not good enough hand dyeing. And I really don't want to say something that is wrong. So do correct me if I'm wrong. And do let me know if this is like an intentional speckling that just happens in this yarn quality. And in which case, it's nice. It makes this kind of have like a sparkly effect, right? With these little white specks. But my first reaction was, oh, is this hand-dyed yarn not up to the standard that I was expecting? Because there's these bits where the dye hasn't taken on quite as well. But anyway, regardless, it's made a really beautiful fabric. I love the variegated. Do you call it variegated or like heathered? I don't know. Let me know what the right word is. But I feel like there's a really beautiful mix of different shades of purple. I almost went for like a dark blue version of this, but the friends I was with at the time all told me, no, the purple looks better on you. And I feel like it does work really well with my skin tone and my hair color. I'm technically a deep winter on the color analysis wheel, so like deep saturated gemstone colors like this are supposed to suit me. So I'm really excited to finish this. I feel like this is very giving like witchy hour. This would be a perfect piece for autumn actually, where October time, you know, when the weather's getting colder, it's sweater weather, it's a bit witchy, it's a bit Halloween vibes. So I'm really, really keen to finish this off and definitely try to get a wear out of this spring and summer with this, but I'm particularly keen on wearing this in autumn time. Now, the last work in progress I'm going to mention today are these vanilla DK socks. So this is one of them finished. I also started this while I was at this conference in Belgium. So I had the right idea to bring another sock yarn in case I finished, you know, the pink ones while I was at the conference. And I was just like really productive with my knitting during that conference. So I did finish that pair of socks. I'm really glad that I bought a second one to knit. So all this progress is also from the rest of the conference after I finished the pink socks. So it's insane how much you can get done. Also, DK weight socks always get a bit more progress out of them much faster. So this is just a plain old vanilla DK sock. I followed the Crazy Sock Ladies DK weight vanilla sock pattern, which is free, but I did still do an Eye of the Partridge style heel that's on the Una socks, as I mentioned earlier for the other pair of socks. And so this is my second sock, and this time I'm also doing another anatomical heel, but it's a lot more obvious this time around, where basically I mostly only do the decreases on this other side of the heel, and then only at the end do I do a little bit of a decrease before casting off. I have a really pointy foot shape, so like my big toe is like much longer than the other toes, and then it goes like a pretty sharp slope, so I thought it would work quite well this way around. We'll see how it goes. I've tried it on so far and it's been good just on this foot, so we'll see after I get some more wear out of them in like a shoe when I finish the other sock. And I just wanted to mention that the yarn is an old subscription yarn from Emma's Yarn. I believe this was the December 2023 colorway, so this dates quite a while. It was in my stash for a long time before it finally got knit as a sock, and it's a really, really cute colorway. It's this light blue colorway, so kind of reminding me of Winter Frost from December with some speckles of copper, which I find like is a really nice detail, and it's a really good contrast against this blue. I'm also using my little Market Town Yarns yarn spindle. And I got this a few months ago, I think. I always wanted to have one of these to be able to knit on the go. I've already just cranked it out. I'm thinking of basically whenever I walk to my department, it's actually a 30-minute walk. So I was thinking that actually I could start getting a bit more progress out of these socks by knitting as I walk. It might be a bit dangerous, but I live in quite a quiet area, and at least the walk to my department is also mostly on quiet roads. I hope I don't get run over accidentally whilst I'm too concentrated knitting. But I think this is a good way of getting a good amount of progress on your projects. It would only work on small projects like socks or maybe like a summer garment. I don't think I can quite, you know, whip this out and start knitting on the street, just because like the weight of the garment itself basically messing with your tension because it's putting your yarn down. So yeah, I don't think you can work on the jumper as you're walking because of that. I always have to have my knitting done for jumpers like this when I'm sat down. So essentially the rest of the project just kind of sits on my lap as I knit. Right, so this concludes my many whips. How many was it? 5 whips. Sorry. I don't know why I'm apologizing. It's more like I'm apologizing to my future self for making myself go through this. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to share with you today was actually some acquisition that I made in my Japan trip. I had scouted out some of the yarn shops that I could visit whilst I was in Japan. There was this particular brand called Walnuts, I think. The flagship for Walnut is in Kyoto, and they have another shop in Tokyo, and they basically stock a lot of European yarns, which I was not after because why would I get European yarns on my trip to Japan? Anyway, I did also read that they had their own hand-dyed brand called Amirisu, and risu means squirrel, which is part of their logo for walnut, and ami means to knit. So yeah, it's a really cute name. Anyway, so I grabbed this yarn, which is a beautiful hand-dyed tono yarn in 100% superwash merino wool. And this is a fingering weight, so it has 460 meters per 100 gram. And it's in this really beautiful ruby kind of raspberry color. Also, can I just say how cute this little label is? And look, there's a little house sticking out. Isn't this adorable? Anyway, the yarn shop itself was beautiful, and I had such like decision fatigue from having to choose the yarn that I will bring back as my souvenir from Japan. I knew I wanted to get a sweater quantity, and there were too many options of beautifully hand-dyed yarn. Not just tonals like this, but also more kind of classic hand-dyed yarn with variegations and speckles and stuff. In the end, I decided to go for a tonal because I thought it will be the most wearable, and I really wanted to get my money's worth out of this. Now, I won't be able to do something with this on its own. I'll have to hold it with a mohair. And I've already started to look at which mohair I could choose. And I think the Filcolana Tilia range has a really good raspberry color like this. Knitting for Olive, unfortunately, it doesn't really. The pomegranate color is too red, and the Bordeaux or Claret are too purple. So I really want a nice ruby color. I also saw Cumulus by Fiberspace has a really beautiful ruby color. And I also tried to check if Isir has a good mohair in this color, because I really want to try out their mohair. I've been told it's really nice. So yeah, if you know of a brand that has mohair in this sort of ruby raspberry color, I'm really keen to know, so let me know in the comments. I'm also actually looking at Colormark because they have some really beautiful reds on there. I think I did see a cone of lace weight cashmere that I could pair with this in this color. That would be super nice. And I think I also want to make my own pattern out of this. I say this as if it was like a huge teaser, but it's really not. I've only released one pattern. Oh, by the way, my pattern, the PhD vest, is a wonderful pattern to knit in this season. So this is a shameless plug, but make sure you check out the PhD vest pattern you might be interested in to knit. And it's also very fast to knit. Anyway, back to the normal content. I think I really want to make a jumper pattern, and I have like my idea, and it will lend itself really well with this color, I think, and like a DK weight. So I will have to hold it with a lace weight here. So yeah, I have ideas. Let her cook. So this concludes 3 months of knitting basically. So like this, I kept this for the end of the video in case like you want to jump straight into the FOs and whips. But basically, yeah, I was away for 2 weeks in Japan. I came back from Japan and I had a big crisis with my PhD, so I was very busy with that. I also visited a friend in Belgium and I went to a conference in Belgium as well. So yeah, a lot happened in the past 3 months, and without realizing it had been 3 months, and I was like, whoa, I haven't done a podcast in such a long time. I also did a yarn festival with that I documented. That was my previous video on my channel. So yeah, I've been very, very busy, and as you can see, it hasn't kept me from knitting a lot either. I also, this is a bit more about my personal life, but I also completed 2 half marathons in that time. So this is one of the bibs for one of them. But yeah, really, it's like running was also a big part of my life these past few months. I don't do it as much anymore since the second half, but I'm really proud of having done that to myself. So I posted a story on my Instagram accounts saying that when I'm not PhDing, I'm knitting, and when I'm not knitting, I'm running. So yeah, running was a big part of my life for a bit, and now I'm not really running anymore because I suddenly got bored out of it. Now I'm in my gym girl era. Anyway, that is not going to take away any of the time from my knitting, because knitting is still my like main hobby, and sometimes it feels like I knit more than I do my own PhD, which is not the best, but it's also been a very good tool in these stressful times, honestly, for my PhD. I'm in my final year of my PhD, and that's why things are getting really busy as well. I think it's just a testament to how much you can benefit from having something that has nothing to do with what you do in work. And like also a hobby that uses your hands and like your crafty side of your brain. And yeah, this is just basically an ode to knitting and how much it's been good for me and how much it's helped me. And yeah, I just love this hobby so much. So this concludes today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you give this channel a subscribe. As I said, we're really close to getting to 1,000 subscribers. So I will be really, really grateful if we could get to that milestone. It means a lot to me. I've had this channel for a year and it's been a great outlet. I have also received some really, really lovely comments throughout this whole year of YouTubing from you guys, so I'm really, really, really grateful for that. And yeah, I just love interacting with people about my knitting and stuff, so make sure you drop a comment if you have any questions about my knitting and stuff, and I'll see you at the next time. Bye!